We are back, video number 13, I believe. Today we're going to touch up on some heavy hitters on topic of metformin, growth hormone, and testosterone. So, do you want to take it away? So, where would people kind of even start thinking about these things? Probably start from beginning, do your blood test and all those kind of things. But what do actually they need to look for? And then touch up on, we're going to go through benefits, side effects. Why do people even think about these things to begin with? And who should probably never touch and come anywhere near them?
Yeah, well, let's start with metformin. I mean, it's being prescribed left and right for lots of really good reasons too, as far as like not just for diabetics. So, I mean, right off the bat, if you are having signs of elevated blood sugar, prediabetes symptoms, things of that nature, then metformin is definitely going to be like first deployment for you. So
probably good to also acknowledge that it's one of the most researched things there is.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredibly safe. It's like, as far as like the side effect, there's really only one, and that's like digestive discomfort if it doesn't agree with you. But that's, I wouldn't say rare, but it's, it's not like you will devastate your digestive system. In a week, you'll know, right? If you start taking it on Monday, by Friday, you're going to know whether it agrees with you or not. But at the same time, the things, let's just say you're taking it because your doctor has prescribed it to you. First, that means that there were a couple things that indicated to your doctor to prescribe it. Number one is probably just going to be elevated blood sugar, right? Above, in the US, above 100 on the number, I think it's nanograms per deciliter. You're going to be like, oh, is this pre-diabetes? Your doctor may or may not prescribe it right that moment, but they'll check it, right? They'll be like, hey, next 3-month checkup or whatever. If this is still high, maybe we better implement some metformin. I don't really go off of just that number. So like the thing that I look at when it comes to insulin sensitivity and whether there needs to be some kind of help in that realm is 3 things: glucose number, A1C, and insulin. So both the glucose and the insulin are fasted. So that means, and that's honestly what I like to see more, especially when you start working with people that are not diabetics, people that are taking metformin for enhancement purposes. Their A1C is going to be through the roof if they're doing their job right. Like their job is, I need to get bigger and I'm eating more food. Most of that's going to be coming through carbohydrates. Their A1C is going to be higher. A1C just tells us that you have a lot more sugar being attached, or glucose being attached to your red blood cells over a given period of time, the lifespan of a blood cell. So about 90 days. So A1C just gives us the percentage of glucose that's being attached, if you want to call it that, to red blood cells for the lifespan of that blood cell. So you're an athlete or somebody who's very active and you're eating plenty of food and trying to grow, your A1C number could be quite high, but your insulin sensitivity could be totally fine. And that's why I like the fasted glucose with fasted insulin together. There's a pretty good trend. I'm going to use American numbers, but essentially we want to see your glucose number somewhere below 90 with an insulin number somewhere below 5 or 6. That's excellent insulin sensitivity, even irrelevant of what your A1C is. Your A1C could be a 6 and you could still have good glucose, good insulin number, especially if you're very athletic or you do a lot of endurance type stuff, right? Your A1C number is probably going to go high because that's all you eat, right? You eat carbohydrates day in and day out. And so for somebody like that, metformin can be very, very beneficial because it's going to help the ease of uptake of glucose into the cells. So when you're eating 1,000 grams of carbs, more of those carbs are actually being stored as glycogen. They're filling up muscle cells better, that sort of stuff. This can work for endurance athletes. It's almost indispensable for somebody like this. They're regularly eating lots of carbohydrates.
So how about someone who is just a regular office person and whatnot, and the doctor prescribes metformin and then like, hey, this is going to improve your health, but never really dwell into details. Why are they taking it and how will that improve their life? And more often than not, skipping the importance of how it should be implemented with daily habits.
That's right. That's right. So that's very important. So we touched a little bit on like what does metformin do a little bit and how is it going to benefit a performance scenario? Just a tiny bit there. Now, what you're talking about, you're not an athlete. You're not somebody who's eating 1,000 grams of carbs. You're actually probably eating pretty normal, but you have an insulin number and a glucose number that's way too high. And, hopefully your doctor's decent enough to kind of look at it and be like, ooh, yeah, you do have some insulin sensitivity problems. So in American numbers, how would that look? It would look like, hey, your insulin number is fasted and it's over 100 or right at 100. And your insulin number, your fasted insulin number, because they're not the same, glucose number and insulin number are not the same. Your insulin number is like 10, 12, 15, closer to 20 even though your blood sugar is still under 100, like, because I've seen people with a 98, a 95 blood sugar, but their insulin number is sky high and they are fasted and their A1C is like 5.6, 5.7. At that point, those types of people are going to benefit from metformin in a few ways, but the main one is that metformin will change the insulin receptor, the GLUT4 receptor at the cell level, which means that now it's much more easily triggered to accept more glucose into the cell. Now, here's the scenario that you're talking about with somebody like this. They're eating normal amounts of glucose. They're not eating 1,000 grams of carbs. They're eating 200 or 300 or less, but they still have these weird insulin numbers. Metformin is going to make the glucose number go down and probably the insulin number go down temporarily. That's a good thing. That's good. But only if we really catch why are the numbers so high to begin with. And this is what I'm going to iterate a little bit is most of the time, the people that are being prescribed this are indoor people. They live an indoor lifestyle. It's very sedentary, but that's not really what I want to highlight. The thing that I want to highlight is they are being exposed to blue light dominantly throughout the whole day. That has been shown in lots of research over the last, I think now 8 years. And there's probably been a couple really recent ones that's actually pretty good studies where blue light entering your eye actively raises blood sugar without eating anything. What does that mean? That means that your body is anticipating something that tells it, hey, we should probably release some blood sugar into the bloodstream. See, people forget that your blood sugar is not just what you ate. In fact, that's probably not even the majority of what your blood sugar is. The majority of your blood sugar is actually being regulated by your liver. Your liver stores glycogen, can release glycogen at any point in time. That's why you can go to sleep and not be hypo while you don't eat, because your body does a good job of regulating your blood sugar even when you're not eating. But that's dependent on signals. One of those signals is blue light dominance. If you envision just the day, right? The sun rises, the sun goes to the middle of the day, and then the sun sets. The daylight changes as the sun goes through. And in the middle of the day is where you're going to get the brightest, bluest stimulus from the sun. Your body, over lots of development over the eons, basically, thousands of years, has developed a response to the midday sun. That response is you're probably going to be the most active because you're a diurnal creature. So what does it do? It means, hey, even if this person doesn't have any food, we should probably raise blood sugar so that they have plenty of substrate to be active, right? So if you think about it just from that context, being inside with a big screens, bright lights in your office, whatever, all day long, you're literally sending that signal to your body all day long. This person needs to be active. This person needs to be active. So your liver keeps jacking up blood sugar, keeps jacking up blood sugar. The moment it starts to come down, it releases a little more. The moment it starts to come down, it releases a little bit more. And that's actually what you start finding when they tell, like a lot of these people will say, I get really hangry, like just randomly I have blood sugar problems. And they think that they're having low blood sugar. when in fact it's probably not low blood sugar. It's their body's response to, we're depleting glycogen from your liver. That's kind of like, think of it almost like somebody's taking from your savings account. When your savings account goes down low, you kind of start freaking out, right? Like everybody's going to see that if you have a savings account somewhere and all of a sudden your savings account is being depleted, you kind of start thinking, there's something wrong. I probably better double check my finances. I probably better go raise some alarms. That's what your body is actually doing. And that's why you get this irritatedness. It's not that your blood sugar is low. It's that your glycogen in your liver is being drained all day long, and your body signals, hey, you better refuel this liver, because if you go to bed with no, very little liver storage, you're not going to sleep very good. So it's being preemptive to that.
Would
So
you go
that,
as far and as speculate that this is one of the reasons why so few people actually gain muscle anymore, because they are wasting so much energy without ever knowing that?
yes, very, very, very true. Yes. If you're a sedentary indoor individual and you have this phenomenon going on in the background, how do you think that's going to go for restorative and repair processes, right? If you're like, at first, it's probably going to be totally fine, but chronically, right? Week after week, month after month, your body is paying a toll that doesn't contribute to what you're wanting to do. The toll is just releasing blood sugar because it's being signaled to release blood sugar, but that blood sugar could be used for muscle building, right? But it could not be. And over time, no matter how much, let me phrase it this way. Your blood sugar is being kept slightly high the whole time because of the signaling factor from the blue light, which also means the insulin is being released all the time as well to make sure that it doesn't go too high, right? Regulatory and counter-regulatory hormones. That's how you start to develop insulin resistance. So when you're young, in your 20s, you don't have insulin resistance yet. So this little phenomenon of being indoors actually contributes to probably pretty good muscle growth, because you're actively releasing blood sugar and your insulin sensitivity is good, and your insulin is pushing it into muscle cells, etc. As you get a little bit older, in your 30s, this starts to take a toll, right? You've been doing it for a decade already. Now your insulin sensitivity is lower, and now not as much of that blood sugar is being cleared out and used for useful things. You see what I'm saying? That's where insulin sensitivity is kind of a key factor to keep track of. Metformin happens to, think of it like dialing back the years, right, of doing this. Hey, if you've been, from 20 to 30, you've been working an indoor job, you start taking metformin, you've probably shaved yourself back 3 or 4 years. But that doesn't mean that the underlying cause has gone away, which is what I'm trying to get at. When you get to the point where a doctor prescribes you some metformin, it's because it's already gone too far. He's trying to kind of almost like band-aid it, right? He's trying to put a band-aid on it so that the numbers look okay, but he didn't address the underlying cause, which is what I just talked about. If your lifestyle is an indoor dominant lifestyle, the very first thing you should start thinking is, how do I stop the signal from my body actively thinking that it needs to release blood sugar all the time?
So how do you use your habits in advantage of you, so you make more metformin use even more useful, and probably even get off it at some point?
Yeah. So one of the main things is going to be immediately recognizing that first step. Hey, the cause of this is not that I'm eating too much food. It could be one of the culprits. It's almost never number one. Almost always number one is take a good hard look at your lifestyle. Do you even get outside, right? Is your version of outside behind a steering wheel driving to and from work? Because if it is, the first thing that I would do is there any way that we can offset the lighting environment? So that would be the number one, because we know that blue light dominant environment signals this, like this is done in research. Okay. So the first thing I would do is, let's see if we can get some software on your screens that makes it so that you don't have blue screens anymore. Number two is, if you have the ability to change the lighting in your office, especially nowadays, most people are actually working from home, right? So A lot of this is in your control. You first can swap out your light bulbs from LED, CFL, or fluorescent into just incandescent light bulbs. So the old style ones. Or you can even go out of the way. People have started to recognize this and are kind of in the lead on some of these things, where they've actually started to develop LED light bulbs that do not give off blue light. So it'll be a little bit of an adjustment as far as like how the light looks to you, right? It's going to be more yellow, it's going to be more orange looking, but it's the signal that we're cutting off. The next thing is, how do we reverse that in a more natural way? Now, everybody's been on the bandwagon of like, after every meal, go for a 10-minute walk, right? They're not specific enough. This is what I don't like. That's a great thing, right? But they're not specific enough. If you tell somebody that, and I happen to have a treadmill in my next room, I'm going to eat my food and I'm going to walk over to the treadmill in my next room. Did I change the environment? No, I walked. Is it going to be helpful? Absolutely. How do we make it more powerful? You remove yourself from the environment. You go outside, so that the sun does a lot of things. One of those things is it's going to make you more insulin sensitive immediately upon being outside, because the sunlight dictates how we use all substrates, all of them, including blood sugar.
And I think if you need a proof, is just go on a holiday on a hot environment, and you'll feel how like your nails start to grow quicker and hair and everything.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, 100%. That environment changes. So now it changes also from through the season. You and I both live in a place where the days get shorter as winter comes around. We don't live near the equator. So how is that going to impact how your blood sugar works? Absolutely it is. So you can expect that in the winter, if you're not more diligent about getting outside, that you're going to have a harder time controlling your blood sugar come shorter days. Why? Because you tend to be inside more. That's where you start to see these trends of, oh, how do I make my body start to change? And it starts thinking deeply about your environment and the activities that you do in those environments. So going back to how to make the metformin work better for you if you've been prescribed this by a doctor, number one, start getting outside as frequently as possible. The easiest way is take the same advice that people are telling you about going for a 10-minute walk after each meal, but do it outside. Okay. I don't care who you are. It can literally be free. I mean, it's 25 degrees below in Fahrenheit in my house right now. I still go outside for a walk, not necessarily after every meal. I actually just go out 3 times a day for a 20-30 minute walk. In 20 or 30 minutes, I'm not going to freeze to death, even if it's 20 below. Okay. So I know everybody's going to give me excuses, but I can't stress this enough. It makes it that much more powerful. So that's number
Obviously,
one.
it's easy to make excuse now because, hey, I got busy this, I got busy that, and we have discussed it previously. If you really need 16 hours a day for work, you're just, let's be honest, shit employee.
Yeah, you're wasting time.
Not that efficient.
You're literally wasting time. You're probably better off doing some of these things. Okay, so I just said, if you can get outside for 90 minutes, okay, who doesn't have 90 minutes in their 16-hour day? I don't care who you are, you have 90 minutes. Does that mean now I'm going to go as far as saying this. There probably isn't a study out there that proves it, but I've seen it time and time again. I don't care if you walk. I'm being dead serious. Just get outside. I actually don't care if you walk. Going outside and changing your lighting environment is that powerful. Light has non-linear effects in biology. What does that mean? That means that a little stimulus causes multiple things to change at once, which means that you've leveraged a tiny stimulus for a big outcome. That is one of the main things that people have to understand with everything that we've talked about on the basics. The reason why they're the basics is because they have the most impact for the least amount of input on so many systems. I couldn't even name them all inside your body. And this is just one of the ways that I'm highlighting it as, hey, if you're prescribed metformin, is it going to work for you if you don't change your environment? Temporarily, the numbers are going to look better. But 5 years later, you're going to be in the exact same spot because the stimulus is still there,
And we
right?
both seen that.
Oh yeah, yeah, time after time.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit about metformin. And is it helpful? Absolutely. Very, very helpful. It is a drug. It certainly works. It does what it's going to do. But just know that that is a band-aid if you're not fixing your environment. For somebody who's been prescribed, you're an average person and you clearly need some help in your blood sugar control.
Yeah,
Um,
so it's a prescription drug. It's very easily available. Doctors are way more open about just giving it out because there is literally next to no side effects apart from upset stomach. Uh, and I believe how long has it been around? 50, 70 years? I've lost count.
Yeah, it's very old, but it works really, really well, right? And that's where most doctors like it's got a track record that it's very, very benign, but it works very well at the beginning. At the beginning, okay? And that's what I'm telling you. You say you're taking metformin, 5 years later, you're back at the same place. The only thing the doctor is going to probably be able to do is give you another drug or bump up your metformin dose again and hope for the best. I'm telling you, the metformin, the very first time you're prescribed for it, the first thing you need to do is start changing your environment so that the metformin starts helping you do permanent change to your insulin sensitivity. You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, it's literally changing nothing, but doing something really helpful for your life will improve
Right.
efficiency of it. Uh, then pretty much make sure that you don't get any worse. Otherwise, you're
Yeah.
just taking drug to mask something that shouldn't have happened to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Absolutely. Because
obviously many other things like I believe it was B12 malabsorption for very, very long use and all those kind
oh
of
yeah, yeah, yes, and that's the thing is you don't really want to be using it year round. So then let's touch a little bit like on the performance side. How would you implement it on the performance side? Number one, if you require large carbohydrate loads, right? So if you're eating, you know, I would say somewhere around
So
5 grams.
let's just I'm gonna stop you there and let's just say someone is going all guns blazing, say client reaches out to you, always been working in office, training really hard, always trained really hard, but now he wants to get the most amount of muscle gained in the shortest period of time. And he's committed, he's got a cook at home, all meals will be prepared, he's going to be, let's say, 100 kilo to begin with, wants to go for 110 kilos body weight. Let's put that in perspective now.
Okay, yeah. So the first thing I would say is, okay, because you have an indoor life, we want to check the basics that we've talked about before. Once those are in place, right? And for this person, if they're really all in, I expect those to be in place the first week. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, set an alarm, do whatever you
Yeah,
got to do, get a new
get your
routine.
walks, get your hydration in, make blood check
Yes,
done already before even starting.
yes, exactly. All of that stuff. And then, boom, we get started. The first thing I would do is, okay, we're going to start growing. We're going to bring in this person's 100 kilos. So I'm going to start them off at eating somewhere around 500 grams of carbs per day. We're going to take metformin first thing in the morning so that we have all day long of upregulated insulin sensitivity. And um, around training, I want there to be some outside time before training, some outside time after training, preferably.
Walk to the gym.
Yeah, yeah, walk to the gym, train, walk back home, get extra insulin sensitivity for free, and it's going to amplify your workouts because being outside not only changes how easily you utilize nutrients and all that stuff, it also upregulates some other things that a lot of people already know about, which is like nitric oxide. Okay, so if you're going to the gym, what does nitric oxide do? Like there's nitric oxide supplements everywhere for improving blood flow, getting bigger pumps, uh, uh, blood pressure regulation, all that stuff. That can be done for free by the sun just by going outside. So you do that before, as you go to the gym. Now you are already preloaded with nitric oxide that's literally been stimulated from your blood vessels being radiated by the sun, basically. And then when you get done with being in the gym, you walk back out, and guess what? the first thing that needs to like, think of it this way: the gym session is going to be high breathing, high blood pressure, lots of activity, right? So you want to sandwich that with low blood pressure, relaxed breathing, and calmness. A walk to the gym outside meets all of those criteria to amplify your workout, right? And you're going to be eating a lot of your carbohydrates in that window anyway, right? So you took some metformin in the morning. That metformin's effects are long lasting, more than that day, right? As far as like upregulating the GLUT4 transmitter and all of that. So you've made that check. Simple enough. You take it with your multivitamins in the morning and be on your way. And then how do you compound that effect? That morning walk, or that walk to the gym and that walk after. You will amplify that whole window of time, and you will improve your performance in the gym, right? And now leaving the gym, you just had your blood pressure go really high if you're lifting really serious weights. You've had your heart rate go through the roof. You've had your breathing go through your roof if you've been attacking your gym workout like you should have been. And now it's time to eat and recover. Well, what's the first step in recovering and being able to digest your food correctly? Getting your heart rate back down, getting your breathing back under control, getting your blood pressure to come back down to normal, right? How are you going to accelerate that the quickest and easiest? By just stepping outside and going for a walk, because now your blood pressure from being outside will automatically drop because nitric oxide will go up. So blood pressure has to come down because blood vessels will expand. Okay. And so now your blood pressure, check, it's checked. You've checked your blood pressure. By the time you get back home, if it's a 10-minute walk, you'll notice that your blood pressure is completely different. Your heart rate will now be much more normal, and your breathing will be much more normal. You eat your food, and that food is going to digest incredibly different than if you would have done this scenario. You got done with the gym, you were in a hurry, you hopped in your car, and you raced back to your house. At what point in time did your body have any time to reduce heart rate, to reduce blood pressure, to do any of those things? It didn't.
This is what most people do, and they don't even go home. They just go to job.
Yeah, exactly, right? So you're following an excitatory activity with more excitatory activity, and you're expecting the digestion and the outcomes to be the same.
Yeah, I spoke just a couple of weeks ago with one of the girls that she works out at home and then jumps on a call straight after she finished her last set. I'm like, this is probably why you're struggling to get noticeable results.
Yeah, and people forget that the activity, right? The gym session is only the signal.
Yeah,
That's not, you know what I mean? That's only the signal. Your job doesn't stop there. Your job is basically 24/7. Like that's why what you just described with a 100-kilo guy who's trying to get to 110. I'm laying all this out not as hyperbole. This is what I would be telling this person. This is what I would be saying. You need to do these things. We need to figure out a way to get some of these things in place to leverage every little bit to get you always moving in that direction.
yeah, yeah.
Because even if you don't eat exactly what I want you to eat, even if you don't do it exactly at the right time of day, the fact that you've laid out the schedule around your training that way and you do it no matter what will automatically start having non-linear effects. In other words, a small stimulus makes a big change because it changes multiple variables at the same time.
And I think this is where a lot of people have got lost as well, because they usually, hey, what supplement do I take? Pre-workout, post-workout, and this and that, and maybe I inject something, maybe I swallow something, and you're like, you are missing out on key things that are for free, that will make massive difference, and why people in 90s were so way ahead of everyone else who are training now.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, first off, they didn't have the internet, right, to distract them,
Yeah.
to keep them inside. I'm not joking, right? They didn't have that to keep them inside. That's the problem. Is it's very
And not
easy.
stressed about anything.
Yeah,
You didn't
it's like
go and stress about, oh, this guy or this girl looks like she does, and I just trained for 3 hours straight and I look like garbage. And I'm like, none of that.
Yeah, there wasn't any of that. There was do your work, and then your lifestyle kind of laid out the foundation for it all to work together. And that's what I try to get people to understand, especially if you're coming from that scenario, right? You have to be indoors because of your job. Well, let's start carving out some time to where we can get you outside at very specific times. One of the most specific is around training. And I would say maybe before that is the morning time, getting outside in the morning so that you kick off your circadian rhythm correctly. And then the second time would be the around your training, right? Depending on where that training is. But if it's in the morning, then you've already done it with morning exposure. If it's in the afternoon, then you have to get outside one more time around that training window to really amplify the effects of what you're trying to accomplish.
So you mentioned not using metformin all year round. What would be your approach on periodizing it? First of all, how aggressive you would be of getting someone off it if doctor has prescribed it, in terms of, hey, let's get your habits in check, because we can reverse type 2 diabetes now. We all know that, just go through probably a long time because you didn't get there over a week.
Right.
But how aggressive would you be of getting someone off it if you don't suggest to stay on it for the rest of their lives, which a lot of
Yeah.
people
So I'll lay out
type 2.
two kind of periodizations. So the athletic version is pretty straightforward. Whenever your carbohydrates go, if you're a 100 kilo person, whenever they're around 500 kilogram or 500 grams of carbs and above, I do implement about 500 milligrams of metformin.
So that's used more or less like a buffer to kind of give your body a bit of a help.
Yeah, a little bit of help to assimilate more carbohydrates, and the fact that you're going to be eating that many carbohydrates for 3-4 months means that for those 3 or 4 months, we're going to manage the potential detriments that amount of food could have. So
Yeah.
you will just take it for that amount of time. You're not going to be able to eat that many carbs all year round. It's just not going to happen, right? If you get the big enough to be eating them year round, then it starts to become more of like a prophylactic, right? If you're eating that many carbs, but always going back to your blood work and keeping an eye. What's my insulin level? What's my glucose level? If it's starting to climb up, well, then maybe it's not a good idea, even if you need those carbs, to be eating those carbs, right? Now it's time to go into a recovery phase.
Yeah.
Right.
And when you say insulin and glucose, those are pretty much something you can check at home, more or less.
Yeah,
Whereas your A1C will be done in lab.
You would have to run a calculation. You could do it at home, but you would run a calculation. The insulin is getting more easily able to be tested at home, but the blood sugar for sure. Like you can test your blood sugar for sure, but it's not really that valuable unless you get an insulin number with it, right?
Yeah.
But even then, in the U.S., easy to get. Like just ordering those two costs you like $30, $40, and you could get that test done pretty much every other month if you needed to. And then the other periodization is what you were referring to. Hey, somebody is obviously struggling with their insulin sensitivity. They've been prescribed it. How aggressive would I be? This would actually be dictated a little bit on the time of year. So if they live somewhere where there's 4 seasons and we're going into summer, so spring and summer and longer days, I would actually take advantage of that, because that's going to mean that this person now has zero excuse to get outside. Okay. So then I would be like, okay, let's be as aggressive with the metformin as the doctor will let us be. Okay. So that metformin really makes a huge impact on on improving your blood insulin sensitivity. And the very first thing that I would concentrate on as far as activities wouldn't be gym time. It would be outside time. Get as much outside time as possible. I would literally want this person to be outside 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, because they can afford it in this big sunlight environment. And I would be very aggressive with the metformin so that we can get the biggest bang for our buck all the way through spring and into summer and then into fall. Into fall, we would start switching their diet away from carbohydrates and into more fat sources like fatty fish. I would be prioritizing that. And at that time, I would start letting them lower their metformin, because at that time, it should have been, almost 6 months of this activity that I'm saying high metformin, high sunlight, high outside time, and hopefully walking and stuff. We would be shooting for like 15 to 20,000 steps a day of being outside. And then in the fall, switching the diet away from carbohydrates into good fat sources, good animal protein sources, and starting to reduce that metformin dose. And that's when we would be double checking, how good did we do, right? Do we need another round of this? Or is, hey, all of a sudden my blood sugar, my A1C has started to come down this whole time, and my insulin sensitivity is looking good. We keep bringing down the metformin. Eventually we get to like a 500 milligram or a 250 milligram dose a day. And if their blood sugar is staying good and their A1C is staying good, then I would remove it entirely. And I would run that type of eating into the winter. And the thing that would start to prompt me to bring metformin back in is if they physically can't get outside anymore.
Right.
Okay. And then that's how I would work that for the winter. Now, if that scenario happened in the fall, so we didn't have all summer long to do any of this work, we're going into the fall. The first thing that I would do is not necessarily go keto, because I don't like that, because people start using bullshit for food. I'm being dead serious, you know.
Yeah, processed stuff and
keto bars and keto cereal and keto this. I'm like, no, that's not what keto is. I'm like, I don't care what you say. That's why I don't like that word. I'm like, what we want is we want good, healthy animal fats, and we want your carbohydrates to be high fibrous tubers, right? Think of eating seasonally, okay? Potatoes, sweet potatoes, carrots, things of that nature that are different. They get processed different. They have different types of glucose structure. Coupling that with some good healthy fats and the metformin dose, instead of being really sky high, I would use the minimum dose effective at that point in time. And the whole goal for that winter time, because this person didn't have a lot of time to change lifestyle and have a lot of cohesiveness with the environment and everything like that, that's when I would go, okay, the whole goal for this wintertime is to get your eating habits in check and try to get some kind of a daily habit where we get you outside like routinely, habitually. I would concentrate on the morning. I would be like, I just need you to get outside in the morning. I don't care how long it is. Literally, I would say, I just need you outside in the morning. If it's 3 minutes, I'm going to take it.
Yeah,
if
stand outside, drink your cup of coffee and chill.
Yeah, do it every single morning. Get in the habit of doing that. That's the routine that I want to ingrain in this person.
But again, just to remind, is because sun exposure, especially getting the sun into your eyes, will improve efficiency of metformin.
Yes, exactly. And so now we get away with the minimum dose effective of the metformin. We make it through the winter, managing the blood sugar, making sure that it doesn't get worse. Like the whole goal there is don't get worse. We've changed your eating habits so that you're concentrating on more whole foods, and we biased those food structures, macros, to make it so that your blood sugar is still managed really well with a small dose of metformin. Then as spring starts to come, when the days start to get longer, then you go into the first scenario that I just described. Bump up the metformin dose very aggressively, start getting outside as much as possible, as many steps as possible, and run that gamut of taking all of that time where the sun is in your favor to change the most about your biology.
Yeah. And once your insulin sensitivity is taken care of, you're going to grow muscle quicker, lose body fat quicker, feel more energetic, and so on and so on and so on. So we're going to cut it short, and we're not going to touch into GH and testosterone.
We can follow up. We're
going to make a next video on this. But again, great info as usual. Thanks for your time as always. And next week we'll follow up with probably GH, and we'll see if we can squeeze in testosterone or not.
Well, if not, we'll make a third one.
No, awesome. Thanks for your time, and I'll speak to you next video.
Yep. Bye.